Oh man, welcome to the UFC London post-fight show here on MMA Fighting. We appreciate y'all for tuning in. We're happy to have you. I am Sean Al-Shatti, and I'm joined by my guys. First off, the man of a million talents, my fellow desert dweller, José Youngs, and of course, Mr. No Gray Area himself, Jed Meshew. We've got the undefeated E. Casey Layden manning the boards, of course. And y'all, fellas, what can you say now, man? Back-to-back weeks where it feels like the sport, all of us are robbed of a great fight before it even begins. Last week, it was Brian Ortega with the shoulder. Tonight is poor Tommy Aspinall seemingly blowing out his knee just 15 seconds into this main event with Curtis Blaydes at UFC London. Your heart just breaks for Tom. That one looked really bad. He was down there for a long time in the middle of the cage. He ended up getting a splint on it and having to be carried out, basically. I mean, Jose, this is now back-to-back weeks for us. It felt like we were set up to have an amazing fight ahead of us. What are you feeling right now after that?
I mean, this sucks. Like you said, the second straight week we've lost. And essentially for the second straight week, we had almost two number one contender fights. I know they were like unofficially number one contender fights, but with Francis Ngannou still on the shelf after his surgery and future in the UFC a little murky. Obviously, the winner of this fight was probably eyeing the winner of Cyril Gane versus Tai Tuivasa, possibly for an interim title or a title shot. I know John Jones and Stipe could throw a wrench into that, but until that fight's official, we're not going to pretend like that's a reality. So it's just unfortunate all around. I feel like this injury was just way worse in terms of the actual injury and what it means and for how it played out, because the Yair Rodriguez-Brian Ortega fight, that actually had some sort of action for as short as that fight was. Obviously, it didn't get out of the first round, but there were some, there were some scrambles, there was some grappling, there was some action, and people were talking about, like, who won most of the fight. For as long as it lasted. The Tom Aspinall Curtis Blaydes fight was 15 seconds. I think Curtis Blaydes landed maybe a punch or two. Tom Aspinall threw a couple leg kicks and before his knee gave out. None of us obviously know what the actual injury is. So unfortunate would be an understatement. This is, like I said, significantly worse for this division and for Tom and how it played out, and for the London crowd hoping to see Tom Aspinall. This ending was way worse than the UFC Long Island card. Just a super unfortunate and super unlucky main event, and yeah, it's just a bummer all around.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on this year, because you mentioned, you were right about the number one contender fights. This is now back-to-back weeks. You even go back to
And
one of the last number one contender fights that we had headlining these shows, and it was Jan Blachowicz, Alexander Rakic. Same thing. We got nothing out of it. We talked on the preview show, guys, about, is the sequel going to live up to the original for UFC London? It didn't.
No.
In the undercard was pretty terrible, and then for a brief moment in this main card, it looks like, oh, maybe we got something here. And then for it to end like this, I mean, Jed, you have talked a lot about Tommy Aspinall and what makes him such a compelling prospect in the lead up to this. The athleticism, that's a big thing for you with Tom. He is still really young, but I mean, something like this looked like a really bad injury. Does this worry you at all about, limiting what Tom could be in his future?
No, it just slows his timeline up because he's probably going to be out a year recovering. But like, I don't know, this isn't 1984 or even 1990s. Like, if that is a blown out ligaments in his knee, even if he blew them all out, like that would suck, and certainly hope that's not the case. But you can come back from that. I mean, we see professional athletes do that all the time. It'll be hard and a longer road, and maybe it will stunt him a little bit. But I mean, Frank Mir came back from damn near dying in a car crash and still ended up, reclaiming a belt and stuff like that. I think Tom's future is still very, very bright. He's just going to be out for a while. But more importantly, maybe the UFC will finally learn that we don't need to close the show with whatever the hell we did, because this card would have been much better if we ended on Paddy Pimblett instead of going Paddy into the Hermanson Curtis thing, which was tough. And then this really unfortunate main event, which has left it not living up in any capacity to the first UFC London.
I mean, I can understand in a larger spectrum why Tom was headlining the show. Heavyweight, such a marquee division, and he really is one of the best prospects in that division. And he closed the show last time and did a phenomenal job. So I can understand that. You're 100% right about the Curtis Hermanson fight being that weird co-main event spot in between the two bangers that we saw right before. That made no sense beforehand, and it made even less sense in the moment. It really slowed down the flow. But I mean, just, wrapping up this heavyweight discussion, Jed, what's the heavyweight picture look like to you now after this? Because we needed sort of some of these answers, and now we just don't have them.
It's honestly the same that it would have been had we gotten more answers, because neither the winner of this wasn't fighting for a title. They are at best fighting for an interim belt against probably the winner of Gon Tai Tuivasa. Like that's the best case scenario, and that depends on Stipe and John Jones never fighting, which pretty good chance. I mean, those are two dudes who just don't fight all that often, so sure. But like it's really the same. It just means that instead of maybe us having a world where Tommy Aspinall is the real deal and he can be in a title fight by mid next year, he's not going to be in a title fight until 2024. And Curtis Blaydes is finally going to be in that, still be in that conversation, but be knocking on the door, because I think Curtis Blaydes is going to fight the winner of Gon Tuivasa. And whether that's for an interim belt or not, that's just how it'll flow. But that if that fight's not for an interim belt, it will be a de facto number one contender fight. So that's good, because Curtis Blaydes has been doing work for a long time. He deserves to get that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a tough. You feel for Curtis too, because I mean, there's nothing he could have done about this, right? And sort of he takes the brunt of it, and now this was a big opportunity for him. Technically, he is now 7 of his last 8 winning in the UFC heavyweight division. That is a damn good mark, regardless of how you get it. Jose, I mean, do you agree? Like, if you're Curtis, what's the move right now?
You just wait out for that UFC Paris main event to play out and probably fight the winner of that. I know John Jones and him have said a couple things back and forth on social media and through interviews. That fight's very unlikely to happen because John seems pretty intent on fighting Stipe. Stipe wants to fight John. The UFC wants to make that fight. It's just a matter of will they make that fight. I don't think John Jones is coming back to fight Curtis Blaydes. So process of elimination, I think the only fight left is what Jed said. The winner of the UFC Paris probably either for a number one contender fight or an interim title fight, which is just a number one contender with a shiny belt that they can stick on a poster. So that's pretty much it. There's really nothing left at heavyweight for Curtis Blaydes to do outside of wait for that main event.
Yeah, it's just so tough. You hate to see it. We wish Tom Aspinall all the best. Hope he's okay. Hope this isn't going to be something that takes him out for a long time to come. In the end, it's 15 seconds. There's not much to talk about when it comes to something like this. So let's move on, guys. And let's talk about what actually was the highlight of the day, because it was a pretty uneventful day for the most part until, wouldn't you know it, it became the Molly and Paddy show once again. I mean, Paddy Pimblett, this dude did it again, man. 2nd round submission at Jordan Levitt. And to me, this was easily his best performance in the UFC. It was super, super slick stuff, I thought, trapping that arm off the back take to get that rear naked choke. And the man even kept his word. He got some teabagging in there. Also, though, I will say a wonderful message afterwards about mental health and the importance of speaking out about those sorts of things. As you know, I have lost my father to suicide, so that hit me pretty hard. So I appreciate Paddy for doing that. Jed, man, I mean, this guy is now 3-0 in the UFC, and every time out, he comes off as more and more of a star. I mean, tonight was ridiculous. The entrance he got, the ovation he got, just all of it. It felt big. You've been pretty critical of Paddy's abilities during this run, and to be fair, you're not alone. I think a lot of us have. What are your takeaways from that, though? Did this change your mind at all?
Not really. I mean, I've never said Paddy's bad. I just don't think he's very good. But he has skills, I've said before, like he could develop. He's still young, but he is just in a place where his stardom far outstrips his ability, which isn't his fault. That's a good thing. Like you want to be a star, and dude, is this man a star? Like that the O2 is Paddy's house. Like when they go back, I know that there are reasons to have Leon Edwards or Arnold Allen or whoever. Don't. It's Paddy's house. Let him close the show and give him matchups he can win, because yes, Molly and Paddy won, and they won over people who are competent fighters. I'm not here to disrespect their opponents in that regard, but like these were fights that weren't like super difficult for them, which is why the odds can show it. But they were still challenges, that's how you should develop people, and certainly how you should play to stars in their home crowd. Like don't give them a total softball, but don't give Paddy Ilya Topuria. Like that's an awful idea. Topuria would absolutely kill him, and you should super not do that. This is good matchmaking. The only issue is that it was the 3rd fight from the top instead of the top, or at least the co-main. But that back take was nasty. Just really savage stuff. I thought
super slick, super slick.
I thought Levitt would be more than an equal to Paddy on the ground, just because he is also a kind of a very good grappler and a super weird one. But that back take was nasty. That knee that probably set up the back take, because kind of feels like that knee hurt Levitt, was nasty. Like, he is improving. He is undeniably getting better every time in and time out. And if he can continue to deliver those performances, dude, he could be a Conor McGregor level star. If he was that good as a fighter, he would be a Conor McGregor megastar. I don't think he is, but I kind of hope he can figure it out and be that, because the sport can always use people of that magnitude. So yeah, great night for him. Great performance.
Yeah, unbelievable, really. I mean, again, the reception, the scene, all of it afterwards. I mean, Jose, this whole week, Paddy came off, as always, really like a future star, like someone who really could get some momentum behind him. But I mean, this was, again, in my opinion, his best performance in the UFC. What were your takeaways? Did this fight change your perception at all of this guy?
No, because I wasn't down on him like so many others were. I knew he was super talented because obviously, if you remember our colleague Pizza Carroll, he's been singing his praise for a long time, to the fact where he's gone to Cage Warriors fights, and I've had to edit a lot of his interviews back in the day. And Paddy's always been like this. So when he came to the UFC, it was just, I felt like it was only a matter of time. And I do like this gradual, slow increase in competition. It seems like every time he fights, he gets not a massive jump up, but like this slow build to showcase new things and showcase that he is a talented fighter. I don't think he's a top 10, top 15 fighter just yet, but he's a good fighter. He was a Cage Warriors champion at one point, I believe. If not, obviously he fought for the title. He's a good fighter. He's not a bad fighter. He's not bad at fist fighting human beings in an octagon. He's obviously undefeated for a reason. Everyone kind of knocking his skills. Like, you saw him kind of, get grounded into the fence, and then he ended that first round on top, still scored for Jordan Levitt. And then he came, as you said, trapped the arm impressively and finished the fight 3-0. If they do go back to the O2 Arena anytime soon, which I absolutely do not think they will. I think they came back to London way too soon. If they go to Manchester, obviously, I think he should headline that card with Molly. Obviously, they can't go to Liverpool because of the new sponsorships don't allow combat sports in the Liverpool arena, which is a travesty, because that place would
just amazing.
Melt. That arena would just melt to the ground if Paddy Pimblett headlines there. But I expect him probably to be on the MSG card, maybe the end of the year card with Molly. I feel like sticking the two Scousers in Madison Square Garden in New York would be an ideal fight card for them to showcase their skill sets and a step up in competition. Also, Paddy looked really big compared to Jordan. Jordan's obviously really strong for his size. They just look like two different sized human beings in there fighting. So maybe a person that can challenge Paddy physically in there as well. So, but yeah, I hope they find the MSG or the end of the year in Las Vegas. So, but if they go back to England, I hope it's Manchester.
Apparently, McCann already said they want to fight in Vegas at the end of the year. Talking to the ESPN crew, so which makes sense.
I mean, Vegas or MSG, I actually really like the MSG a little bit better. That feels like the proper sort of escalation, right, in terms of the world's most famous arena for combat sports, that sort of thing. I mean, Jose, Jed was saying earlier, Paddy could be a Conor level star if he had that level of talent, and I don't know that he does have that level of talent. He continues to prove people wrong, so it would be silly to say he doesn't, but feels like, that's within the grasp of possibility. There's a timeline where that happens. How high do you feel like this could go? Like, where's the ceiling on this for you?
Who is, in all of combat sports, who generates the most headlines, I'll say, to Conor McGregor right now in 2022? This is a question for both of you. There's an answer that he's fighting in August. All of combat sports. The answer is Jake Paul.
It's Jake Paul.
And
Jake Paul all of combat sports. Okay, yeah, that was correct. An obvious answer.
So
yeah.
Jake Paul tweeted about this fight and said, pay Paddy his millions. That answers your questions. Whether you guys or whoever believes that Jake Paul is not a fighter or whoever, or you hate him, who cares? He generates headlines, and he's tweeting. He talks about Conor. He talks about Canelo, and now he's talking about Paddy. So that should just tell you the level of stardom that, Paddy Pimblett should have. I mean, freaking Logan Paul, the older brother, who he just fought Floyd Mayweather Jr., who's the biggest box office attraction post-2000. And Logan Paul just fought him, and he's saying he wants to fight Paddy now. Like, come on, guys. He could be obviously a rock star. He signed. This is why if you go look at the 2021 Breakthrough Fighter of the Year on MMAfighting.com, you look at the voting, I voted Paddy number 1, and he only had one fight in the UFC. This is why. One fight in the UFC and is already generating headlines, and people are talking about him like that, signing a $1 million deal with Barstool after one fight. How many UFC fighters make $1 million a fight? Almost none. And he's doing that. And then and now he's bringing Molly up with him. I don't know how you can knock the guy. He's like, this is prize fighting after all. Whether you believe he's a good fighter or not, or you dislike him as a person, you dislike the gimmick, you dislike his hair for whatever reason, prize fighting wise, as a prize fighter, Paddy Pimblett is one of like the 5 to 7 most fascinating fighters in the UFC. So he could be a rock star for sure.
I mean, and again, I thought he had a really terrific message afterwards. So for all the criticism, and I understand the criticism, some of it is certainly deserved, but I thought he used the platform in a very articulate and respectful way, and I appreciated it in that respect. I mean, Jed, I think there are still obvious questions about Paddy's ceiling and his skill level and how high he could reach. I think Conor McGregor, obviously 2-division champion. I don't ever see that happening for Paddy. I would be stunned if he actually ever won a belt in his UFC career. But again, you never know at this point in his career. He's still developing. If you're the matchmaker, it feels like you still have to be very careful with how you navigate this, right? Like, what do you do with this man? Like, how high do you push this for the next one? Whether it's in Vegas, MSG, wherever you go with it, it's going to be big.
It's a really good question. I think that you should continue to give him extremely winnable fights. At some point, you're going to have to like really, really test him. I don't think you need to do that at the moment. Like, give him the full MVP Bellator style matchmaking. Just give him a bunch of softballs, because there's no reason to potentially kill the golden goose. Let him continue developing. Nobody in that arena cared that Jordan Levitt was probably a winnable fight for him. They certainly didn't care about Luigi Vendramini or any of the other. They're just there to watch Paddy do Paddy stuff. So let him do that. I don't know who. I'm not a matchmaking guy, so I don't know who I would put against him. I will say, I don't think it can happen now because he did the whole WWE thing. There was a moment when it would have been an incredibly good idea, and I know it was joked about or whatever, but like Logan Paul said he wanted to come to the UFC, he wanted to fight Paddy. The UFC should have just done it. Should be like, yeah, sure. Because that's obviously not real combat in like any meaningful way, but it is real spectacle, and that would have been enormous, both for Paddy and his career, monetarily. That would be like the ideal opponent for him at this point in time, frankly. But, otherwise, just give him another matchup he can win. If you want to do it at MSG, if you want to do it, instead of doing it in a fight night, put him on the main card of a pay-per-view at the end of the year in Vegas against a winnable matchup and do that. I think no wrong way to eat that Reese's, just as long as you don't give him Ilia Topuria. Don't do that. It's the only bad answer here.
Jose, I see you frantically shaking your head this whole time. Hit me.
Yeah, I like sports. So I want to see him fight another UFC fighter. So he should fight Otman Azatar. He should fight Otman Azatar because they were tied to this event specifically. Otman Azatar is undefeated. If Paddy hands that man his first O. Also, not for nothing, we talk a lot about social media and what this matters and this and that. I think it's all silly. I think people need to go outside and get off social media. But if those numbers do mean things to you, Otman Azatar almost has 1 million Instagram followers, and he barely fights because he is an actual rock star in his home country of Morocco. Like, he's eating with princes, flying private jets, all of this. He also happens to be an undefeated UFC fighter. So yeah, he should fight Otman Azatar either in Las Vegas or in Madison Square Garden. I think that'd be a fun build-up because they are just so polar opposite in terms of personalities. And again, if Paddy wins, takes that O. If Otman Azatar wins, the UFC already has, a guy they can build off of with Paddy. Yes, Otman Azatar is the guy that got released from the UFC because there was like that whole weird thing if he let people into the bubble that he wasn't supposed to.
The bag.
What was in the bag, Jose?
What was in the bag, Jose?
Right. And see, now we're talking about it. Imagine the buildup and how many times that is going to be asked. And how many weird things he's going to say, like, oh, it was a bag of potatoes. Oh, it was this. Oh, it was that. That's the fight to make. Like, we're not going to pretend like there's another good option. You should fight Otman Azatar. I want to see that fight.
I agree.
I want to know what was in the bag.
Sold.
I really do.
Jose sold me. Whoever said Marco Madsen, God no, for sure.
Yeah,
don't do that.
That is not.
Jose did it right. That's a good answer.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, fellas. Anybody who's sort of in that periphery of maybe like the top 30, like 25, 30 range, like just again, you want Paddy to win at this point if you're the UFC. You want to keep this going. You don't want to just throw him a wrestler. You don't want to just throw him somebody who's gonna basically end this whole party before it really gets going, right? In the meantime, fellas, let's keep it rolling because again, Paddy was only half of this show, and Molly Meatball did it again, y'all. Like another spinning back knockout by Molly McCann. This time, it starts the beginning of the end against Hannah Goldie, and she really brought this card alive because this thing was struggling before she came out there and did that. To win is one thing, but can you believe lightning actually struck twice, Jed?
No, I did not anticipate. I thought she would win because she should have won that fight. I didn't think it would look that good. And I don't think anyone could have imagined that another spinning back elbow would be involved, which I think makes her one of two people in the UFC that have a spinning back elbow knockouts, even though this one's a little different. Um, I think the other one's Ricardo Ramos. Could be wrong on that. Don't quote me on that one. But yeah, she looked sensational. Everything you said is correct. The card desperately, desperately needed a jolt of life, and she gave it to everybody. Tremendous on the mic as always. She and Paddy are a great 1-2 punch. They should never not fight on the same card because it's just a joy to watch them be so excited about each other too. Like I'm not a big Paddy Pimblett guy. It's fine. Like I don't care, but it is very exciting to, watch how enthusiastic they are about each other and seeing Paddy's celebration backstage after Molly gets the win and then Molly coming down to the cage with Paddy. It's just like, that's just good vibes. I'm here for the good vibes. So yeah, it was a great, great performance and just good vibes all along.
Good vibes always, man. That's all we're ever trying to do here on this show, right? We're just all about the vibes. Jose, I mean, this is 3 in a row now for Molly. I think a lot of people are a little surprised sort of how far this has come for her. Like she is not somebody who I think a lot of people would have earmarked as a potential star when she came into the UFC, but boy, it's happening. Like this was, again, one of the biggest moments on the whole card, and she was sort of one of the biggest names throughout the whole week. Does it feel to you like she is becoming one of the bigger stars that the UFC has in these women's divisions?
In terms of star and drumming up interest, obviously, she's obviously been a talented striker for a long time. She's one of 2 women in the UFC to have 3 straight wins with over 100 significant strikes in those 3 straight fights. The only other one is Joanna Jędrzejczyk, who obviously many people put on the Mount Rushmore of women's mixed martial arts. So Molly's always been a talented fighter. She's run into these, like the Tyler Santos fight. Tyler just kind of wrestled her, and then the Laura Pacheco fight, is that who she lost to? Another thing, she just got kind of overwhelmed with the grappling inside the empty arena, and then she's kind of put it all together. Now she took a step back, and she's been rattling off all these wins. If you throw her into the top 15, it might be a rough night for the Scouser. But she's obviously one of the more interesting personalities in all of the UFC, not just women's mixed martial arts. She, of course, has that $1 million contract with Barstool too. So that just goes to show you how well of a prize fighter she is. She already got the bag that most fighters are chasing for, and she's been in the UFC for a minute. So yeah, super interesting individual. Talented striker. I worry that if they throw her in there with, like we've all talked about, like with a high level wrestler or a grappler or whatever, she's just going to be kind of ground out into the canvas or the octagon like we've seen in the past. So don't do that. Give her fun fights until you have to give her those grapplers and let her build back up, and never put her on a different card than Paddy Pimblett. I don't think they want to compete on different cards. I want to see that cam of Paddy and Molly always watching the other one. So yeah, it's great. Even when we were in Phoenix and they were doing the press conferences, and Molly was just absolutely bombed out of her mind. It was just a good time. She's just a walking.
She's just roasting the hell out of you. She's just roasting the hell out of you.
Yeah, she is. She still does. I still get tags, and she still tags me and Nando stuff on Twitter. So just a walking good vibe generator from Molly McCann.
Yeah, it's an interesting conundrum with both of them because, first of all, I agree with you 100%, Jose. At this point, you can't split these guys up. Like Molly and Paddy need to be on the same card regardless. Like it's just the vibes are immaculate, and it's just a good time for all. And again, see how many times you can keep this rolling. But Jed, does this feel similar or at all almost like identical to the Paddy type of situation dilemma that the UFC is in, where I don't know that a lot of us are earmarking Molly as a future champion, but again, she's becoming so popular with these knockouts and the way that she's being received by this London crowd. Does it feel to you like this is a similar situation to Paddy, where almost her popularity is exceeding her abilities, or are you actually a little bit more high on Molly than you are on Paddy in terms of her ability to make it into maybe top 10, top 15, and do some damage in there? I believe you're muted, my man.
It's a little bit of both. My bad. Because I think it's undeniable that her star power exceeds her ability because, as Jose said, she got $1 million bag, and she is not $1 million fighter based on the current pay structures of MMA. You know, like that's just not that. Those two things are not the same. But I think she is a better fighter right now compared to her division than Paddy is to his. Some of that is because Paddy competes in the best division in the sport. Molly competes in a good division, but not the best division in the sport. So there's a little more room. Also, Paddy's a little bit more still has more to develop in fight years and fight game. I think Molly is mostly a cooked meatball at this point. She is what she is, where she can make small minor improvements, but she may crack into my top 15 this month for rankings. And I think she has a better chance to be a top 15, top 10 fighter just because I think she's pretty close to already there, whereas Paddy has a long way to go. I don't think she probably has less of a chance to, like, if you play it out 1,000 times, to find the lane that gets her into the top 5 title contention. Whereas Paddy, there's more of an opportunity for that, even though I would say it's maybe more likely that Molly at least becomes a top 10 fighter, if that makes sense. So I think she's looked great every time in, and she obviously is drawing interest. And I think you can be a little riskier with her, in part because we've already seen her lose. It hasn't really set her back that much, but you can throw her. I'm trying to think of who's like in that top 15-ish category for the flyweight rankings right now.
You got like Andrea Lee, Macy Barber,
Yeah,
Vivian
dude,
Rochelle, those type of things.
The fight to, because she's got a fight coming off a win. The fight to make is the Marina Moroz fight. So both of them have boxing backgrounds. Marina Moroz is coming off that win over Agapova. She's kind of been in that top 15 or just outside for such a long time. Molly, actually, her first love was boxing. And Marina was obviously the coach of the women's Ukrainian boxing team for a long time. So I think that's the fight to make.
Or just give her Miesha Tate, because Tate's apparently washed. So just build a star, baby.
That actually isn't the worst match.
That's not a bad fight.
I'm being real.
Right?
That actually isn't the worst idea, to be honest.
You
got my mind working on that one. I wasn't even thinking about Miesha, but I'm kind of here for that. Jose, last thing on Molly, and then we'll move on. Right now, if you look at the MMA fighting global rankings, which are the only rankings that matter in the entire sport, I'm just saying, Molly McCann is not on the top 15 just globally when it comes to 125, the women's class. For you, come next ranking title, you're not part of the panel, but just in general, if you were, would you put her in the top 15? Do you feel like she deserves to be there yet, or maybe not yet?
I think she's in that 16 to 19 range. She's not quite in the top 15 yet. Now, if someone ranks her at 15, 14, I'm not going to argue with it. I just think she needs one. Like, can you guys, off the top of your head, can you name who she knocked out in the last UFC London card?
Oh, man.
Probably not.
I just did this game with someone else, and they couldn't did it. I knew the answer, and now I've already forgotten the answer.
Right. You forgot it.
Carolina. The only reason I know that is because that question was asked earlier today, and I looked it up, though.
There you go. So I think she needs one more win, and it has to be over a name that people recognize. Like, obviously, anytime you fist fight a UFC fighter, it's a tough task. But if the name value isn't there, you're probably not going to get all the recognition. Hannah Goldie is, how many pro fights does she even have? 10, 11, something like that. I think she just needs one more, and then she'll be in the top 15. Oh, but if she's 15, so be it.
Hannah Goldie only had 7 or 8 pro fights before this. Sorry.
Correct.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's a fair conversation to have. But it's regardless, it was a lot of fun for those 30 minutes that we had these guys back to back. And I just wish the rest of the card would have been like that, but it wasn't. And so let's sort of jump it around on the rest of this card. I'm going to skip the co-main event for right now because there's not a lot to talk about there. I actually want to go to, I think, one of the sadder outcomes, maybe just if you're a longtime fan of the sport. Alexander Gustafsson, man, he kind of flew under the radar this whole week. I think a lot of people didn't even realize he was fighting on this card. It was his first fight in the last 2 years. He's sort of been in and out of retirement.
In their defense,
this whole time,
he was not fighting on this card. He did not fight on this card. In their defense, he got murdered.
It was rough, man. 67 seconds. This is now his 4th lost in a row. This time it was Nikita Krylov. All those losses are finishes. This one was a pretty bad knockout and just kind of was one-way traffic the whole way through. Like you could tell the first 15 seconds where this one was headed. Jose, man, I mean, Gus is 35 years old. He is not an old man by any stretch, but maybe in fight years, he is certainly older. But what do you make of this? Is this kind of, are you still wanting to see Gustafsson fight? Is this sort of, DC's calling for his retirement tonight? Where are you at with Gustafsson at this point?
I mean, I feel weird when he does fight. I feel weird when he fights.
That's a really good way to explain it, because I agree with you. There's a weird feeling when he fights now, right?
Because he's already in the Hall of Fame. He's already one of the greatest fighters of all time, like light heavyweights of all time. He really was the flag bearer for that European, not just Sweden, but like all of European MMA. I feel like the UFC really kind of got behind Alexander Gustafsson, and he's beaten some of the best fighters ever. He's even gone up to heavyweight and challenged, and got steamrolled by Verdun, but he challenged him nonetheless. So I just feel weird because a fighter of that caliber, I don't want to just be like, oh, you got to go. Like, I feel weird saying that, but at the same time, he's already retired once, and I was pretty confident he was never going to come back at retirement after that. So I don't know, man. I mean, I'm never going to be bummed when he fights because I think I enjoy watching him fight. But if it's going to be like this again and again and again, maybe it is time to hang it up. And if he wants one more, like we've all heard the rumors of that card in Sweden coming up, just, give him one more fight. Give him someone that maybe you can go out on a W
give him a
with,
gimme though, right?
Yeah, give him a gimme. If he wants to, if he doesn't want that, maybe Matt, because he's had a lot of fights fall out over the last few years, maybe just match him up with a guy that he was matched up with before. He's already done camps for, but I guess the phrase is I just feel weird when he fights.
What about you, Jed? You sort of same spot as us with this?
My answer is the same as it always is in these. I would prefer if he retired. It would make me feel better because then I won't have to watch him and feel sad. But I'm never going to tell somebody how they can and can't make money unless it's Bigfoot Silva. And that's more that you shouldn't, there should not be a commission that literally sanctions that man to fight. They still do, but if he wants to keep fighting, he wants to come back for the Sweden card. Do your thing. I would just be a lot happier if he chose not to do that. And it would be a lot cooler if he was going to keep fighting for the UFC to just give him a softball, because previously his losses have felt that he just wasn't engaged, right? We talked about it in the preview show. It just seemed like he wasn't all the way there. He was competitive at points against Anthony Smith, who's good, and the John Jones rematch, etc. That one was his chin just crumbled instantaneously. The first shot he ate, he was on stilts for the rest of the short fight. I think his chin probably is pretty gone because it's not like Krylov is an enormous hitter. And so that at light heavyweight, that's really tough because that's a division where everybody can kind of hit you. Yeah, if he's going to keep fighting, I would love for the UFC to give him a small middleweight who's bad. Do that sort of thing with him. Just give him a win because it makes us feel good. But it would honestly, he probably should have just retired. Was it at the Sweden card that he hung up the gloves and then came back? He probably should have just stayed gone there. That feels like the right answer. And I don't know why he chose to come back, but it hasn't gone great for him.
Yeah, something about tonight too was just it's just really uncomfortable from the go, right? Because it was just not competitive from the first 5 seconds of that fight. And similar with the Verdun fight, that was not competitive either. It's been a long time at this point since Gustafsson was competitive. His last win is over Glover Teixeira, and Glover Teixeira is still going, and Gustafsson seemingly
5 years ago
cooked. The life cycle in MMA is just so erratic, and you can never predict it, man. It's super unfortunate. We're going to get to the peeps here in a second, but before we do, we do have to at least address this co-main event. Jack Hermansson beating Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis was very upset about it. I'm not sure why. Jack Hermansson was throwing. He threw over 250 strikes, landed 100. Jack Hermansson was busy. Chris Curtis just couldn't really figure out how to cut him off and actually get his range going. Jed, I see you just already trying to burst in. What's up?
Oh, it's easy to know why, because occasionally you get really mad at yourself for not being as good as you wanted to be at something. take golf, for instance, and then you might blame it on other things. Like I might want to be a good golfer, and then when I hosel rocket one into the trees, I might be like, damn, I hate this friggin' 6-iron. What a piece of shit club it is. When actually it's entirely operator trouble. And that's what that was. Chris Curtis was really mad that he thought he was better than he was. And he had no answer for basic footwork and kicking from Jack Hermanson. I don't know whether it was just an off night or whether he just doesn't have the ability to actively cut a cage very effectively. But he didn't have anyone to be mad at but himself, because Jack Hermanson fought a really smart, really good fight that I frankly didn't think he had in him. And I mean, he didn't kill Chris Curtis, but he comfortably won, in my estimation, 3 rounds. Some of the judges gave that third to Curtis, but yeah, he has no one to be mad at but himself.
Yeah, I echo that 100%. Jose, what do you think in regards to this whole thing? We saw him afterwards, Chris Curtis flipping him off. Jack, I even got a little upset. It was very out of character for Jack, who's like one of the nicest guys out here. What did you make of this whole thing?
I mean, you're telling me that someone's whose main training partner, Sean Strickland, is just kind of a loose cannon after they lose? Shocking. But yeah, Chris Curtis, he lost 3 rounds. I mean, Jack Hermanson essentially, how long ago did he get this fight? Like 2 weeks, maybe? A week and a half ago? Yeah. Like,
yeah, it was
really, like a couple weeks. Like Jack Hermanson has basically done like 2 or 3 full camps to get ready for Darren Till, who just, is all footwork in and out and counter striking. So Jack Hermanson is like, well, I've done all of this striking. I might as well just, keep the distance and outstrike Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis has also, been a welterweight for a big majority of his career too. Now that he's fighting a middleweight, like even AK Lee on our Slack channel was like, "Oh, I forget that Chris Curtis is at middleweight this time." Jack Hermanson was just, using his range well, and just won. He just won 3. He won 3 comfortable rounds in my book. I don't quite agree with Chris Curtis saying he was, running the whole time. He just couldn't get through that reach of Jack Hermanson, who just kept, like you said, how many strikes did he throw? 200. It's not running. That's not running, my guy. That's just, a hellacious barrage of strikes that he just couldn't figure out. And he's probably just frustrated. Whether he goes back and realizes that, I have no idea, but I can understand the frustration if you fly all the way across the world to fight someone and you just get a perfect game thrown at you. It's got to be a frustrating feeling.
Yeah, I mean, it was a wonderful story we had going with Chris Curtis, right? I've been saying it's one of the best stories we had going in MMA. This is sort of a weird way for it to end, but obviously he'll continue on in the UFC. He's going to continue getting fights. They love guys like this who's going to step up on a moment's notice. Maybe he'll actually go back to his real division, which he's a welterweight. He was never really a middleweight to begin with, so he kind of has sort of an open option now. But meanwhile,
middleweight's a bad division, so you can make a lot more hay in a bad division than in welterweight, which is a very good division.
That's fair, but he did look much, much smaller than Jack Hermanson in there tonight. He looked like a welterweight fighting a middleweight. Casey, let's get you in here. Let's get the peeps in here. In the meantime, we'll run down some other results. Also, Volkan Ozdemir with a weird one over Paul Craig, but I kind of am just thoroughly enjoying any Paul Craig fight. They're very weird, and I'm here for it. And I actually really enjoyed that, I think, more than most people. Also, Nathaniel Wood looked tremendous against Charles Rossi and Jonathan Pierce, getting the only finish on the undercard against Makwan Amirkhani, and Muhammad Makayev just dominating Charles Johnson. That to me was a standout performance as well. Casey, who was your star from this event? If you get one takeaway star, who was it?
Me outside of Paddy and Molly.
No, it could be Paddy.
Paddy and Molly. I mean, there were the stars going into the event, and they became bigger stars after the event, especially with Aspinall. Unfortunately, what happened? There's the shine is all on them now. It's not being kind of what's the word mixed in with Aspinall. But yeah, Paddy and who else looked good? Mostly it was a lot of bad. Honestly, it was like who looked worse tonight. It wasn't like who. Yeah, it was one of this. Yeah, we don't have these cards often, but this is one of them where we're kind of talking about the negatives more than the positives, unfortunately, but they can't all be winners.
Yeah. They can't all be winners, and it's fair to acknowledge when it happens. All right, Casey, what are the peeps saying? Let's hit a couple questions here before we get out of here.
There we go.
All right, this one's coming from our good bud, Joseph Boza. He says, is Curtis screwed at heavyweight? The problem is 2 of his 3 losses in the UFC. And his career are to the champ Francis. Yeah, I mean, guys, we sort of talked about this on the preview show where Curtis has been around for a long time in this division. He has beaten a lot of guys. The only people he's lost to is Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou, which, if that's your run at heavyweight, that's a damn good run. I don't know that he's screwed. We sort of laid it out at the beginning of he might actually slide into an interim title shot depending on how this Francis saga plays out. But I mean, what do you think about this question?
I don't think his losses to Francis matter at this point. Like honestly, at all. One, Francis may or may not leave. If he leaves, then it super doesn't matter. But even if he doesn't, like Curtis is just. There's a time window where that could have been like the blocker to him getting a title fight, but it's gone. He's just beaten all the people, and the way the division is laid out, if he wins his next fight, which as we discussed should be a number one contender / interim title fight, doesn't matter who's the champ. It doesn't matter what else is going on. He's just going to get the title fight because he's the number 3 heavyweight in the world, and he will beat another top 5 heavyweight in that regard. So yeah, I don't think it actually affects him at all at this point in time.
Yeah. I think as long as Blaydes gets another like a type of victory like he had over Dawkins, essentially not a fight like was it Rosenstruck that he kind of was grinded out for 25 minutes that would kind of just pretend never
15.
happened. 15 felt like 25. Yeah, as long as I think he just needs one more of those fights, and then he's back. And then we're like, all right, he's 0-2 against Francis. If Francis is still the champ, then they'll run it back, and it's a new Curtis Blaydes. So no, I don't think he's screwed.
Also, I will say it does kind of seem like it might set up for him pretty nicely, depending on what happens with Francis, because obviously then he would fight the Tai Tuivasa versus Cyril Gane winner, and I think most of us would pick Cyril Gane to win that fight right now. And we saw against Francis, wrestling might be the way to beat Cyril Gane, and Curtis Blaydes can certainly do that. So there is a roadmap for Curtis right now.
Yeah, I think it's more just getting the fans and moving the needle enough for the UFC to really push him as far as that main event. Obviously, the resume is there, the skills there. It's just the popularity, I guess.
There's just nobody else at heavyweight is the thing, though. Like I would agree, and normally that would be the blocker here, but like if he beats Gane and Gane beats Tuivasa, there ain't another soul at the heavyweight that you could do. Like that's just it. He just has it.
Your boy Alexander Romanov is at home just punching air right now that you won't mention him.
No, I would love Romanov to do well, but Romanov's like he's gonna fight like a top 10-ish dude, and they're not gonna be like, and because Tom's dead, like if this had been like a tight fight and could have gone either way, and Blaydes won a nip tuck decision, and then Aspinall could fight Romanov, maybe that could happen. Tom's probably out for a year, and Romanov's nowhere near a title fight at this point. So it's just the seas have parted. Blaydes has a very linear path in, and it won't matter at all. And especially won't matter if Francis leaves. Then it's whatever.
Yeah. What else we got, Casey? All right. This one's coming from Mehdi, who says, what do you think Paddy should improve on to become a top 5 lightweight? His BJJ seems solid. Striking is good. Avoids damage. I don't know about that. I would disagree on the avoiding damage part. But yeah, I feel he is up there already. I mean, Jose, what do you think, man? What is lacking for you right now with Paddy in terms of his ability to maybe climb into that top 10, top 5 space?
Any sort of defense or head movement, I guess. His defense seems to be right now. It's just kind of run forward and then just kind of, eat like 6-7 punches, grab his opponent, grapple him down, and just kind of use he's also like his last 3 opponents, he's just been bigger than. Like he's just physically bigger than his last 3 opponents. Like as we've all said, Jordan Levitt is surprisingly and deceivingly strong for his frame and build. Like we saw him just kind of pick Paddy up and drop him. But Paddy seems to have like really good reactive grappling. Like he can snatch necks, he can snatch arms, he can snatch bodies and arm triangle and stuff like that. But to do that, you have to put yourself in risk. So I would say tighten up that defense, get some sort of head movement. Because if they give him a striker who has good takedown defense, that could be an interesting stylistic matchup for me. So I guess I would say striking. We also haven't really seen Paddy against like a one hitter quitter type of guy that can just dead a human being. He's fought 3 guys that are
good. Him against that,
right? I agree, but that's why I said Ahmed Azatar, because he's another physically strong lightweight that hits really hard.
Is he still in the UFC? I mean,
he is.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
He knocked out your boy Cama Worthy, I think, his last fight.
How long ago was that?
2020.
It's wild.
It was the end.
Okay.
So like it was like September.
Okay, yeah. I was just like, I'm trying to
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah, it's
Like,
a long
I
time.
vaguely remember that guy. I just know about him and the bag of potatoes. That's all I remember from him.
He's 2-0 in the UFC with 2 knockouts, neither of which have gotten out of the first round.
And he has a brother
Has-
who's also in the UFC.
I don't think
I
his
believe
brother's
his
in the
brother
UFC,
is
but-
cut.
No,
Brother's okay.
Yeah.
didn't his
I
brother
know
get cut because of? We don't need to go. into
Yeah.
that. Let's not do that at the
Yes,
moment in time.
yes, he was though, Jed.
Yeah, Jose is correct though. Paddy does not have good defense, nor does he avoid damage. If he gets that, Dustin Poirier was really just dog shit defensive fighter too, and then he got really good at it and became a top 5 fighter. Like that's interim champion. Like that's the path right there. Because Dustin Poirier hit really hard and was a competitive fighter, but his defense was trash. And that's why Connor tuned him up, and then he got good defense. And look at him now. So that's the path for Paddy.
Yeah, I agree. This next one's coming from Sheila, who says, what happened between Hermanson and Curtis before the fight? Why did Curtis act like that after the fight? And why did Hermanson apologize to him? Well, it seemed like Hermanson apologized to him because Hermanson yelled F you right afterwards, and they were sort of having that little exchange. And I don't know, to me, it just seemed like Curtis was very upset at what we said earlier, right? The frustration of not being able to figure it out. And Jack maybe running away that last like 20 seconds. He definitely did that.
And Hermanson apologized because he's just a good dude.
He's a
Just
very good
salt of the earth. Was just like, hey, I'm sorry, fans. I'm sorry that I won dominantly and cleanly. Like, just a great guy.
He literally used his post-fight interview to be like, hey, Tom Aspinall's probably going to come out here and entertain you
That's
guys.
tough.
Gotcha.
Didn't age well. Did not age well, but it was a good thought.
Appreciate the sentiment. In the moment, it was nice.
Yeah.
All right. Casey, let's say 1 or 2 more, and then we will get out of here.
Yeah. Just more of a comment. I think going along with what we said.
This one's coming from Jordan. Says, Jack was running, not Chris's fault. He wanted to hang, but Jack wasn't letting it happen. Yeah. Jack needed a win, man. This was a big fight for Jack. Like, he really
Jack
needed a
was
win.
not running.
Oh, no, he was not running. He was
It
using
is
the cage.
entirely Chris's fault.
Mhm.
Chris could not effectuate offense against a man who was kicking him repeatedly.
People
That's
just
not
don't like.
running. That's beating a man's ass.
People don't like because they get all tied up into the spectacle and the prize fighting and the pro wrestling type of aspect of the UFC, but we forget it's a sport and people put game plans together, and they're not always exciting.
Also,
though,
Chris Curtis could fight him.
But also,
All
though,
I'm
card
saying-
placement played a
Well,
huge role in this. If this
Sure.
is the first fight of the main card, no one cares. No
It's
one's
just a
talking
fight.
about it like this. No one's criticizing anybody. We had a really slow and somewhat dreadful card, and then it got picked up in a hurry by the 2 Scousers, and then we were immediately thrown into this, and it went right back down, and everyone got mad. That's what happened.
Also, Chris
Alright.
Curtis figured out how to fight him in round 3. He learned cage cutting between rounds 2 and 3, and he had his most success round.
he made it
He still
competitive
lost
in the
that
third. He
round,
still lost, yeah.
but he at least stopped chasing him and getting kicked and cut the cage off and managed to effectuate offense. Could have done that for 10 minutes beforehand.
Yeah.
Maybe he'd had a better shot.
And Chris Curtis being the smaller middleweight wasn't as big as a disadvantage when his last 2 victories that we saw were in the UFC Apex cage, which is significantly smaller. He actually went against a real full-size middleweight in the full-size octagon, and and he just was not prepared to.
And
catch up
the
with
style
him.
too, because I think Curtis expected her, because I certainly did, expected Hermanson to do Rodolfo Vieira. He thought Hermanson would come into him and try and wrestle, which obviously he's really good at. Hermanson just didn't do it, and then Curtis had no plan B.
It could also just have nothing to do with any of that, and Jack Hermanson is just a better mixed martial arts fighter. Like if they fight 10 times, I think Jack Hermanson wins 10 times.
Yeah, but I think that fight's different in a smaller cage.
Yeah.
I still think Jack wins. The fight is that cage is what 2/3 the size.
LNL.
Still an L, but there's a difference in the dominance of it. But obviously, just Chris Curtis just hate saying it, he got exposed a bit, and but that's what you need.
He's still fun. He'll still be around. This isn't
yeah.
for Chris Curtis, obviously. All right, Casey, let's get one more.
One more.
Get out of here. Also, just here on the post-fight show while you look. Speaking of the Paddy and Molly show, apparently Drake is buying Paddy and Molly Rolex watches with his giant winnings that he just won on Paddy tonight. So there you go. Even Drake is in on Paddy and Molly.
Let me see. I had a question. Oh, you know what? We talked a lot about Gus. Let's talk about a little bit about the other guy, Al Capone.
All right, this one's coming from Joseph Boza, who says, did Nikita save his job tonight? I think if he lost tonight with Contender Series coming up, he would have been fired because that would have been 3 in a row. I don't know about that. I mean, I don't know if I agree with that, but what do you guys think?
You know what? Nikita Krylov is essentially just the light heavyweight Alexander Volkov. Just gets mauled one fight and then comes back and just smokes a dude in 30 seconds, and all of a sudden he has another big name after that. Like Nikita Krylov, like for as much as we talk about like, oh, Nikita Krylov isn't this knockout guy, he's only reached the judge's decision once.
Oh yeah,
won.
He's a get
like,
guy through and through.
Oh yeah.
That you make him fight anyone, someone's dying in that fight, unless for whatever bizarre reason you fight Johnny Walker, and he's the only guy that doesn't finish Johnny Walker these days. So yeah, Nikita Krylov is a bad dude. He just fights really good fighters that beat him. Also, I think he said he was like
in a Nikita Krylov fight.
I think he alluded like he wasn't 100% when he fought Paul Craig or something like that. There's also a lot going on in the world with both of his home countries, so maybe that was a little bit of a disadvantage in that side. If we're going to talk about,
he also was killing Paul Craig until he got caught.
Until Paul Craig did the Paul Craig
killing
thing.
Paul Craig.
Yeah, he had a lot going on both in and out of the octagon at that time. If we're going to talk about cage size and stuff, one of his countries was invading the other one of his countries in the middle of his camp, so it's a lot going on.
Also, I mean, you got to say, you look at the guys he loses to.
Yeah.
It's a pretty elite group. It's
Very
Jan
good.
Blachowicz, Glover Teixeira, Paul Craig, and Magomed Ankalaev. 2 of those men
splitting,
are former champions. One of them is a future champion, and then the other is Paul Craig. Like, that's not who just does weird stuff. So, like, that's not the worst run of opponents to lose to.
Does
It was a split decision to Glover.
Yeah.
Split decision.
If Gustafsson fights again, I think someone threw this up. I threw it up in the comment, but him versus Paul Craig makes a lot of sense.
That's what I tweeted, because they were supposed to fight once before.
Yeah, it was,
and then I can't remember who pulled out, but I think that's the fight.
I almost someone said OSP, and that kind of feels okay to me too.
That fight is just going to be awful, so I don't want to do that.
But there's a high likelihood no one's going to get seriously hurt.
I mean,
how soft are we now? We watch cage fighting for a professional.
I'm soft for people I hope no one gets hurt. Like.
I mean,
I hope my feelings don't get hurt, Casey. Yeah. I had to watch Paul Craig knock out freaking Shogun Hua. Now you're gonna make me do it again to Gus? Like, that's just wrong.
I was about to say, like, if you look, like, someone might not get hurt. Paul Craig, not only did he finish Shogun tapped to strikes, and then he snapped Jamal Hill's arm in half in Arizona. So yeah, you fight Paul Craig, you might get hurt. Really,
yeah, that's exactly. I don't want to see
you get hurt below the neck.
Shogun is the fight. What? That's actually the fight I want. Is Shogun?
A rematch.
No.
Gus is a Shogun rematch.
No.
That I kind of like that. The Shogun fight was the one that back in the day that propelled Gus to the first title shot against John Jones. Kind of go full circle. I don't hate that.
I'm fine.
I will die on the hill that Lyoto Machida has one fight after his one last fight in Bellator. UFC re-signs him. We finally get the trilogy, and then they can both retire and fuck off. That's what I want. Machida can go do karate combat. And
fuck off, legends.
You're acting as if Shogun has one more fight and is going to retire. That dude's going to fight for another 10 years.
He just said he said he was going to have 2 more. And
in
the
UFC.
He's going to keep it going long enough to, like, Casey's going to be in the UFC by the time Shogun retires. Casey's going to be Shogun's retirement fight.
Shogun Gus. That is a fight I'm okay with. I accept that fight.
All right. Well, Casey, hit that music. It's that time. It's only 4:00 here in the afternoon on the West Coast. It is absolutely lovely. We have a whole little Saturday afternoon, or I guess night, we can enjoy, fellas. Good stuff. Good stuff, everyone. This has been the UFC London post-fight show. Wish we could have ended on a better note with Tommy Aspinall, Curtis Blaydes, but it is what it is, I guess. This is just what we get in MMA sometimes. We don't deserve good things. Some of it was fun, though, and we appreciate you for hanging out with us. Keep it locked to MMA Fighting, as always. We will keep you posted with continuing coverage from UFC London, MMA Hour back on Monday. You know the drill. On to the next one to Sunday. We got the whole crew. It's good times, good vibes. We love you guys. That man is Jed Meshew. You got José Youngs over there, the undefeated E. Casey Layden right there. I am Sean Al-Shatti. Have a great rest of your weekend, and We'll see you soon.
Love you guys.